Don't be intimidated by two-way switching. It really is quite simple. I'll show in this video how easy it can be. Hi, I'm Gary Gray from Wiring Training. Welcome to my channel. There's two different techniques for two-way switching. I was only aware of one when I started my apprenticeship, which was the way my boss showed me. And I've adopted that same way for my entire career whenever I've wired two-way switches. But at some stage working, I came across a fault where it was actually done in this other technique. And it had me scratching my head. So I got my pen and paper out and took the two switches off and actually sat down and drew out the circuit of how this other method was done. Once I had it laid out in front of me, I could clearly see how this method worked. I think this method is used more of a conversion when there's been a one-way switch installed and at some time later the customer is asked to have a second two-way switch installed. This method doesn't require changing the active and the switch wire at the original switch. It only requires 3 conductor cable running to the second switch and a little bit of a change at the original switch on the terminals, and then you've got a normal two-way switch arrangement. So we'll stop this video just for a moment and I'll get on my computer and we'll go through the two types of techniques. Okay, so if we look at the computer screen now, you'll see I've got 4 sets of two-way switches. So if you just look at the first row, that's the first scenario that we're looking at. Now we'll assume the switches all down this left side are one end of a corridor, and the switches on this side are all down another end of a corridor or a passageway. So we'll call this end of the passage the north end, and we'll call this end the south end. We'll put a dotted line down here just to segregate the two ends of the passage or corridor. Okay, so now you can see I've written that the switch is off in this position, and we'll just show you why. So if you go from the active, follow through, and you'll see that it just goes around in a loop. It doesn't go anywhere. If you follow the lamp from the neutral, it doesn't get an active anywhere along its switching path. Now in this next scenario, we've left the south end switch untouched, but at the north end we're down, we can say we're down that end of the passageway, we wanted to turn the light on. So we flick the switch into the down position, and now we'll follow the path from active down through this contact to this common, cross to the common of the north switch, through its contact now switch down to the bottom, and it gets to our light and cross to neutral. So it lights up. Excuse me. Okay, now in the next scenario, we've had our north end switch down and we're not going to touch it. We're going to go up to the south end now, and we want to turn our light off. We've turned it on from down the north end, but we want to turn it off from up at the south end. So if you follow this circuit now, the active goes nowhere, so our light clearly will be off. Now we're not going to touch our south switch. Now we've switched it to the down position, but we will switch it at the north end to see if we can turn the light back on. So now if we follow our active through, you'll see that it comes down through our common, through the common at the other switch, and to our light and lights it up. So now looking at this, if you look at the south end switches here, hasn't been altered. So we're assuming now we're down the north end of the corridor and we want to turn the light off and on whenever we feel the need. So you can see here in this position it's off and this position it's on. So we get full control of the light from down this end when the contacts are in the up position. Now if this happened to be switched down, you'll see we still get full control. We can operate our switch, it's off, or we flick it the other way and it turns it on. And then if you look at the south end here now, we get the same thing happening. If we move to this centre area where the switch is not touched at the north end, we can have the light on in this position at the south switch and we can have it off when we flick it the other way. So in this scenario here, we've got full control both ends of the corridor no matter what position the switch at the other end happens to be in. So now if we go to the other scenario, this one here is a scenario where a single way conversion to a two-way is the way I see that one. This one here is the way that I was always taught to wire up a two-way switch, and I don't know whether that's the reason. I find it so much simpler to actually follow, but they both work quite well and they are quite simple when you look at them. So this one we have an active going to the common of one switch, which stays unchanged. It's always the active on every scenario, and this one has the common connected as a switch wire to the lamp, and the other side of the lamp has a permanent neutral on it. So in this scenario here we follow the active through, the switch is up on both of these, so active gets to our lamp and through to neutral, so our light is on. Now we flick the switch at the other end to down and we find that we try to follow the active through and it comes to a dead end. So our light is obviously off. Now if we leave that switch down but we change the position of this switch, now we follow the active through, goes through the contacts of the switch, up to the light and through to neutral, so it's now on again. Now if we leave this switch untouched but change the other end of the corridor, we can turn it off as we have our active coming down through here and comes to a dead end. So that's the two different methods. I hope you found that useful and cleared things up somewhat. Okay, this is a demonstration to show you how to wire up two-way switches. We've got ourselves here a 9-volt battery, which is going to be our power supply. So this works just the same on mains voltage as it does on any voltage. The only difference is working on mains voltage should only be done by licensed electricians. We've got our lamp here, which will light up. It's a 12-volt lamp, but it'll light up fine on 9 volts. And we've got a toggle switch that's basically going to be working as a two-way switch. We've got the center as a common, and then we've got each outside. It'll switch depending on which way we flick the switch. It'll go from common to this way in that position, and common to this contact once we flick the switch that way. So we've got two identical switches with wiring, which is not the friendliest colours I've put on there. We've got white going to the common on both switches, and we've got blue on one side and green on the other. So we'll be wiring those up shortly. We have our lamp, which will get connected with a neutral or a negative to one side permanently on the lamp, and then the other one will be hooked up via the switches. Now I should explain a normal domestic light switch, that for anyone that's not quite familiar, we have our common in the middle here. We have a looping terminal on most switches these days. You'll find a looping terminal opposite, and you'll see a lot more brass showing on that compared to the other contacts. So that looping terminal is only for joining wires, it doesn't go anywhere. With our common, depending on which way the switch is operated, it'll switch across to this other side in one way, and then when we flick the switch the other way, it'll go from common across to this side. So that's no different to the toggle switch, where we're going from common to either side. It's just a little bit more visually easy to see which way the switch is activated for this video shoot. So with that said, we'll hook this up and get it so it actually lights up for us. So we'll hook our neutral to the light, and that doesn't get altered. Now we'll just do the first scenario I'll show you is one where we've gone from a one-way switch conversion to a two-way. So in this case we have our active, so that's our supply from the battery. It's going to go to the common of our single switch. Now it doesn't matter which side we choose to make the switch wire. It just means the switch has got to be operated in a different position. So now we hook that up in that position. We've got the switch wire going to one contact, and then we flick our switch, and lo and behold, we've got a single switch. Now this done as a conversion, we'll take our active out of the common, and now we'll introduce our second switch. So in our second switch, the commons get joined together as was shown on the drawing, and then we've got our switch wire going to our light and on one side of one switch. So now we just bring the other switch over and join in with that as well. And then we put our active together with the other two switch wires, strappers as they're called. So we'll join all those together. And now we have the light lighting up. We've got both switches in the up position and the lights off, as it was on the drawing. So if I turn this switch on, the light goes on. If I want to turn it off from the other end, I can turn it off. But I can also turn it on here, turn it off. I can do any combination I like. I can control the switch from either end. So I can turn it on and off here with that switch in the up position. I can turn it on and off this end with it in the down position. Now if I do the same here, it's in the up position, I can turn it on and off. If it's in the down position, I can turn it on and off. So now that satisfies our operation of a two-way switch. Now there are three-way switches which I'm not going to cover in this video. If you are interested, please leave a message in the comments below, and I'll look at producing a video for that as well. But all that's required is actually putting in a third switch, is a special type called an intermediate switch. Now this has a very unique switching arrangement which is different to a two-way switch. But you can have 3, 4, 5, 10 switches. It's unlimited. The only thing is you need to use intermediate switches all the way through except for the two ends. The two ends are just normal two-way switches. And then intermediates go anywhere in between depending on how many you need. Now this wiring works whether you're working on a vehicle on 12 volts, you want to set up cabin lights, on a boat, anything at all, and it also is what's used for mains wiring in houses. So same technique, works fine no matter what voltage you're working with. So if you like the video, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We'll be loading many more videos up covering the basic principles. And for those of you that want more involved explanation and details, there will be a Beyond the Basics training course available as well. Okay, with that said, I think we're all done, and hopefully you'll catch up with us on many more videos. Thank you.